All right. Recordings in progress. Hi, everyone. Happy Tuesday, February 8th. I want to welcome you all to our select board meeting and officially call the meeting to order with a roll call vote, starting with Jack.
Jack Creighton here.
Corey Evans here.
Jean Haley Dipple here.
Diane Kennedy here.
Carrie Thompson here. All are invited to join us for the Pledge of Allegiance if they wish to participate. And I got our flag. Hold on. Here we go. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Let me read our meeting language here. Tonight's meeting is being conducted on the Zoom platform and live streamed on Cohasset 143 TV and our town Facebook page. The public is invited to participate on the Zoom platform, which can be accessed using the link provided at the top of the posted agenda for tonight's meeting. Members of the board and other scheduled participants will be able to participate when called on by the chair. Board members will be able to ask questions of any participant, and all votes taken tonight will be by roll call vote. Members of the public who wish to speak in public comment tonight are asked to raise their virtual hand on Zoom, and I will promote you, and you must provide your full name and address for public record. Please note that comments on platforms other than Zoom are not being monitored, and this meeting is being recorded and will be available for later viewing on Cohasset 143 TV and our Facebook page. All right. Are there any members that would wish to say something in public comment tonight? Please raise your hand if you are out there. I do not see anyone as of now. So moving on to a quick order of business before our main order of business tonight, which is the RFP review and award. We continued the hearing for Split Rock last meeting, as you all remember. I did get word from our town council, Jim Lamke, today that they're still held up with a couple license issues and it's proper to postpone it one more time. They also are planning on meeting with planning board at their next meeting. So it seems like timing wise, would be more appropriate for us to continue this till our next meeting for when they've met with planning board. If that's okay with the rest of the board, I'll entertain a motion to continue that. Chris.
Could you just clarify that to be March 1st? You're continuing to March 1st?
Oh, yeah. So our motion will be to continue this hearing for Split Rock until our March 1st meeting. Thank you.
I move that the board continues the hearing for the alcohol license for Split Rock until March 1st, 2022.
Second.
Okay, just to clarify, it's also for common victualler, I believe, not just alcohol.
Yeah, it'll be for that and entertainment. It'll be all, but I don't think you haven't had the license on the calendar yet. I think the only hearing that's actually open is the alcohol.
All right, fair. Okay, so Corey, you were right. All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on that? All right, roll call vote. Jack.
Jack Creighton, aye.
Corey Evans, aye.
Jean Haley Dipple.
Diane Kennedy, aye.
Carrie Thompson, aye. All right, that is done, to be continued. Moving on to our main order of business, dealing with Barnes Field and the RFP review and award process. This has been a few months coming, and I want to welcome Michelle. Michelle, thank you so much for spearheading this and helping with this and always doing what you do week by week for the town. You're just a gem, and we're grateful to have you. So give us a quick update. I want to start with giving an overview of what's going on.
Sure. So as everyone knows, we released an RFP for the Barnes Field complex. We received one response, and that was from CYBSA. Within their response, we did ask for many qualifiers, which they answered and responded to all of them. They demonstrated their ability to operate a recreational field. They have a strong volunteer base. They have support of local businesses and families. They provided attachments A, B, C, and D, which were their 990 EZ, their insurance certificates, resumes, and their draft safety plan. Some of the highlights included in their response was their baseball and softball instruction to children as young as 4 years old. They have a wonderful opening day celebration, as well as All-Star Weekend. They indicated they have no plans to reconfigure the field. They do operate a snack shack. It's permitted and inspected by our Board of Health annually. They indicated their schedule is April to October, and they actually highlighted the events within those months. And I think at this point in time, based on all the information they provided, I would recommend moving to a notice of award for CYBSA. And that would be the first step, and then negotiating the lease terms.
Okay, that was my next question too. Do we need to make this motion before going over other lease details, or do we go over lease details before making the motion at the end of the meeting?
I think it's important to make a motion to at least move to the notice of award, because that acts as their temporary license.
Okay,
Because as we move forward with the lease, we want to make sure that anything that they want to start setting up for the field, the groundskeeping, if we get a thaw or something, that they're able to do so without any restrictions.
okay. And just a couple things too that I want to let people watching know. The RFP and draft lease can be found on our town website under bid postings. We also did accept comments on this lease in writing in advance of this meeting at our select board comments at cohassetma.org. I'm going to be tougher tonight about allowing other public comments because a lot of comments don't necessarily have to deal with the lease. I think there's been some confusion. We're talking about the lease tonight. This is not a debate about the lights. So I really want this to be a chance tonight for the board to speak. If a member of CYBSA wants to speak, I will allow that as the applicant, but I would prefer to hear the board's comments first and then go from there, because we have gotten a lot of feedback. All of us have gotten feedback. We got several comments about the lease even as soon as today. So I think that most of it has been said. I just want to make sure this is a proper process and then it doesn't turn into a battle, if that's okay with the board. Okay. Does any member of CYBSA want to speak on behalf? I don't think that's necessary. I think Michelle has been pretty straightforward about it. Corey, you have your hand up.
I mean, I think the president of CYBSA, Vince Thornton, since this RFP comes from them, just like we would with the hearing, we'd probably have the applicant, just say some words. If you felt like that was necessary, that may be helpful or maybe not.
It's absolutely appropriate if Vince would like to speak. Vince, we're putting you on the spot here. If you would like to just come on in, let me try to promote you. Hold on. Vince, can you hear us? I believe you're muted. I see your pretty baseball field background, Vince. Okay. There you go. We can hear you now.
Yeah, sorry, I'm trying to change my background here so you can see my lovely face.
Great.
In my mind, anyway.
He's back, right?
Anyway, okay. No, I think Michelle did a great job summarizing it, summarizing the lease parameters. There are definitely some other factors in there, and I do want to just talk about how this is a lease between CYBSA and the town. So we want to just maintain that focus.
Yep.
And we'll try to push through. We talked to Michelle about some of the factors, and I know she's reached out to get legal counsel and got some this afternoon. I'm sure there'll be some other factors that we need to touch base on as well.
Okay. Okay. Any other comments, Vince? And for those watching right now, this is Vince Thornton, president. That's your official title, right, of CYBSA, and as the applicant.
That is correct. That is
Great.
amongst other
Yes,
things in town.
you have many titles in life, I'm sure. All right. Thank you for being here, Vince, and thanks for
Thank you.
applying. All right, Diane.
There we go.
There you are. No, I just wanted to say that I thought the response to the RFP was very thorough, and I appreciated the details that they gave us. I think a lot of the discussions about the lease terms are like any other negotiation, for conversation going forward, but I was very impressed with the response and am very happy to, at whatever point,
Oh, you might have just muted yourself.
I'll
I
talk quicker.
also
I'm
was
done.
impressed. I also was impressed with the response. I think it was very thoughtful. It was very well done. And yeah, it was solid.
Thank you. We put a lot of effort into it, so.
No, I can
Appreciate that.
tell. I can tell. And fortunately, you are the only applicant, so no competition tonight. All right. I want to open it up to board questions. Well, actually, wait. Do we want to make the motion to offer this award and then move on to lease details? Okay. I would like to entertain a motion for the award to CYBSA.
So I move that we advance a notice of award to CYBSA for the lease of the Barnes Field complex.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Second,
Several seconds. Jack's a second. All right. Any further discussion on this motion? All right. Roll call vote.
Jack Creighton, aye.
Corey Evans, aye.
Jean Haley Dipple Dye.
Diane Kennedy, aye.
Terry Thompson, aye. All right. Congratulations, Vince and CYBSA. That part is done.
Thank you.
Now we
First-
can move on. Yes, first
First
step is
hurdle.
done. All right, the award goes to you. Now we can move on to hashing out further details of the lease. And I know that we've all read this. I know that several of us have questions about a few things. One thing that I've heard a lot about, and I wanted to just let Michelle speak on real quick. I'll start and then I'll let the board continue. I'm sure a lot of us have similar questions. One comment that's been coming up from a few people is the alcohol policy. Michelle, would you clarify that for us as to how that will be enforced?
Sure, so.
The no
included-
alcohol policy, not the
Yeah,
alcohol.
no, absolutely. So included in the lease, you'll notice there's a reference to rules and regulations set forth by the select board.
Mhm.
These are the items that we would put in that exhibit. So things such as, there's a no alcohol policy, which I think a lot of the abutters wanted to make sure that was highlighted. And I do want to say, we received several comments from the abutters, and all were very reasonable based on the use of this field. I didn't have a chance to talk to legal about all of them. I was primarily working on the ones that I had received in advance. And we're making modifications as we speak to address some of these items. But as far as the no alcohol policy, that is something that'll be addressed in the rules and regulations set forth by the Board of Selectmen in Exhibit A.
Okay, Corey, is that a follow-up question or another question? Okay.
Well, I was just going to kind of procedurally make an observation or just a question. We may, town council's not here tonight, and obviously this is also council thing. So there may be an opportunity here for us to just think through a list of questions that we can then have follow-ups and clarifications if we think that's necessary. So, if Michelle doesn't know something or there's something that's unclear, as I understand, this was a lease that we drafted, that the town drafted. So I also want to hear about any changes that CYBSA would have, but I think we should come out of this meeting with the goal of having a list of clarifications to really understand, the things we have to kind of square. I also have one question. One of my questions would be, this is, seemed like a fairly straightforward landlord tenant, but just kind of technically speaking, one question I have is the landlord the select board because it was transferred to us, or the town? Because there's some things in here which I'm not quite sure we have the authority to do as the select board, but if the landlord is the town, then this makes a little bit more sense. So that's one kind of question I had reading through this.
So I believe the answer to that is the landlord is the town, which is withholding to the select board to
Right.
make the decisions, if I'm stating that correctly.
It's
So
kind
I
of
think
one and
it's
the same.
twofold. Yeah.
But we wouldn't have the authority to, override, something else. Like we don't have the sole discretion to do whatever we want. We couldn't turn this into a Macy's if we wanted to.
No,
Just there are limits to what we can do. Okay.
there are limits.
Yeah, our power is way more limited, Corey. Yeah, we are awarding this as a board, but it is town-owned land, right? We don't own it as a select board. We protect it though and represent it as elected officials. But again, Corey, I mean, obviously anything that we talk about tonight, we will confirm with council and make sure that things are written properly and legally. All right, Jean, I think I saw your hand next and then Diane.
Yeah, to Corey's point, this was a lease that we drafted, we put out publicly. I would anticipate that many of these sort of applicable legal requirements that we have in this lease have already been vetted with council. I know they were.
Right.
And so I don't want to drag this out with back and forth, particularly where, unless it's a comment that the select board thinks that we should consider and put before council, who is being paid by taxpayer money, I
Mhm.
think I want to be careful about the back and forth there. I think we should look at the lease and make a decision about if there's anything additional we want for the lease that we propose to the public
Mhm.
based on the comments presented. And it's, we need to also, I think, let CYBSA weigh in, because they're the counterparty to
Right.
the lease, and have that opportunity. And so I just want to be careful about having a free-for-all in terms of needing some structure around this. So I think it makes more sense for us to think about on the substance, what people's concerns are. If there's anything that can't be addressed tonight that
Mhm.
AP needs to weigh in on, which there may not be, or there may be. Michelle is here and I trust that she has a
Yep.
good sense too of some of, I think, this back and forth. And then make decisions. If we don't need KP, I don't think we should reach out to them, quite frankly. If we can, some of this may just be policy decisions that we need to decide upon, make a decision and move on.
No, that's valid, Jean, and I'm really trying to make this streamlined and not a free-for-all, and I think we all want that at this point. So that's a valid point. If we need KP at all after this meeting, we can reach out to them, but it might not be necessary. They have obviously read over the current draft and the first draft.
And I'm sorry, just to add on,
go
I
ahead.
did read the lease carefully in terms of the rules and regulations.
Mhm.
And I think that there's a potential to award the lease, but still have, if there's a lingering issue that pops up, we can continue to discuss it. The lease allows for that.
Right.
So we could have a decision on the lease, and then let's say there's, one point that we need to clarify, we can still do that through the rules and regulations requirement.
Exactly. No, I agree. This is not written in stone forever. We can make changes in the future to the lease. We can, or if CYBSA wants to change in the future, that's also possible. It can be ongoing, but we obviously want to get most of this hammered out and most of this correct so we can move forward. Diane, and then Vince, and then Jack.
Yeah, my questions / comments are kind of what we're starting to talk about, which is sort of the order of operations. When I first read through the lease yesterday, I was kind of surprised that it didn't say the town as opposed, and it said landlord. But I trust in council, but some of the things that I would like to, in terms of a lease framework, it's fairly standard, and there's not a lot that I as a layman can suggest to it. However, I do think the rules and regulations, because it's public land and we're the stewards of public land, and we have a lot of public interest in how this particular lease is executed, I think it is really important for us to work out the rules and regulations and be very specific about that. One of the things where it said about improvements on the field, and I know that, we all know that the ultimate goal is to try to add some lighting so that they have some ability to play longer hours. But we're going to need to understand what hours are part of this field, and what days and weeks and months, and how many days and weeks and months. I think that all can be hammered out in rules and regulations, not necessarily in the lease. Similarly, I thought about the alcohol, because that has been brought up to me by people in town, and I thought, well, that's crazy, because you don't it's not allowed on a youth sports field. So like, does that need to go into rules and regulations? Like, do we need to be that explicit? Similarly, there's something about the board having, and I just changed, I don't want to touch my mouse pad or I'll mute myself, but so I don't have the lease right in front of me, but up on my screen. But there's something about our sole discretion in terms of allowing for capital improvements on the field, i.e. lights or facility.
Mhm.
And it's like 2 paragraphs or 2 subsections later that it talks about applicable, all laws applicable would all current laws need to be applicable to whatever we do. For me, before I would want to grant the authority for lights to be installed, for example, I would want to make sure, like in a building permit, I don't want to issue the building permit till I know they've gone to Concom and they've gotten that approval. And I'm using that as an example, not that they have to go to Concom, but like that all the steps are in place, the what they need to, whether it's a traffic plan specifically for extended hours or whatever, that all of that is buttoned up prior to us making that sole decision about whether they can pursue something. So I don't know whether it's worth putting that in that, I think it's section 8 where it says something about our sole discretion, that, it would be subject to any permits that might be needed from other boards in town. So if that made any sense without me looking at it.
No, that's a good point, Diane. And again, if we need to ask town council, we can. Michelle, do you think, or what do you think they'd say about that?
I'm just
You
looking
might
back
not
at my notes
know.
because this was actually brought up by CYBSA. They wanted to make sure that they understood what was meant. It was section 5C.
Yep.
It talked about permits and other approvals necessary to utilize the premise. And legal came back and said, it would be anything. It could be a zoning permit. It could be a Board of Health permit to run the snack shack. And it just kind of runs the gamut. If you want to outline exactly what those permits are, we can. But it's better to keep it broad, because the more we get into details, you don't ever
Yeah.
want to miss something.
Yeah.
So legal's opinion was just make sure CYBSA is aware that there's several permits that may have to be pulled, and then go from there.
And this is just a legal battle always, right? We don't want things to be too specific or too vague when drafting documents like this to benefit all parties. But I think that's a good point. Vince, you had your hand up and then put it down. I want to make sure you.
Yeah, some of the points were made by Diane,
Okay.
but then some other thoughts came into my mind. This is town-owned land. It is public domain, so we follow all the rules and regulations of the town. We as the board, we are stewards of the land, but we're not there to police the activity that may
Right.
occur. If we see something that's derelict, we definitely will point it out and call the appropriate authorities in that regards. And we've been very good stewards, when over the years, as we've done improvements, we have talked to the former conservation agent Jeff Summers when we were thinking about some of the drainage issues, or actually talking about restructuring the batting cage on the Freedom Field, or adding another batting cage off the Chase Field, which never happened. But we have followed the permitting process. We talked to the former building inspector when we were talking about adding the dugouts, rules and regulations on setbacks and height restrictions and things of that nature. So we have always followed the permitting process. So anything that we do going forward will definitely follow those components as well.
Okay. All right. That's well said. Jack, you've been waiting for a little bit.
Yeah, I think this is some welcome progress. And I think we as a select board need to make sure that our citizens, wherever they might fall on this issue, are well listened to and well represented. My sense on the process is this lease makes sense. I like the fact that there's a provision for rules and regulations, and that there will be separate decisions and discussions about those rules and regulations, including the lights, including those other things. I think in order to get this moving, we at least, and this lease is pretty well crafted. And it takes some of the things that are not better served by decision-making in the overall master lease, if you will. So as Diane suggested, moving those issues into the rules and regulations, it also maintains flexibility down the line. It allows the town to step in if there were abuses that were to occur down the line. But it also really solidifies, this. So I guess my feeling is that with a couple of things that I think Michelle has pointed out in her town council, there may be some kind of small modifications, but overall, I'm very satisfied with this lease. And I think the real work is going to be in when we see exactly what it is that on the issue with the lights and what are the details or lack thereof. So I think and I think Carrie made a good point that we need to get some progress done on this. We need to, in any negotiations, when you have the solid basis, you want to get that done. And then we can move forward on rules and regulations.
Okay, thank you, Jack. Diane, then Corey.
That's kind of my question is, again, the fundamental framework of the lease is pretty standard, and I don't have some real general opinions or comments on it. I think, again, the devil is in the details. It's in that addendum document. And I just, ask the board, what and how and where do we take that conversation? Because there are a lot of things that have nothing whatsoever to do with the lights.
I was going to say that too. It's not just
like
about lights. Yeah,
like subleasing, for example. If to whether we wanted to ask CYBSA that one of the conditions is that they're not allowed to lease it to another softball league at night or something like that, and that it's the sole use for Cohasset Youth Sports, CYBSA, that kind of thing. Like, I think those details do need to get ironed out. They have nothing whatsoever to do with future lights or no lights. Understanding exactly what the daytime hours are as it exists now. Again, irrespective of whether lights are proposed at future and that kind of thing, parking, all of that. So I do think that needs to happen. I think that's a conversation, and I guess I just want to understand how and when that will take place.
No, that's a valid point, and I think we need to discuss that and decide that tonight. And again, like you said, Diane, this isn't just about lights. It's, people have brought up a lot of other safety questions and parking questions and time of day, time of night questions, and, confirming that the no alcohol policy stands. And we've gotten a lot of very good, interesting feedback, I think, on a lot of issues that are not just related to lights. Someone brought up, music regulations and how loud music could be played. Is there going to be music? So again, people are bringing up a lot of really interesting points. And I do think we need to discuss how and when we do this. Obviously, we're going to have to hammer a lot of this out at a future meeting, but tonight is the first step. And as much as we can get done tonight with this lease, not related to lights, I think is productive.
Could I just jump
Yeah.
in,
Yeah.
and then I'll shut up. But basically, like, things like music and alcohol, to me, are just part of the general bylaws of the town.
Right.
And I do think that's a question that council should advise us on, whether that needs to be specified
Specifically worded.
in rules and regulations, because in order to have any kind of amplification of sound, you need an entertainment permit, and our restaurants have to do that. Our Arts Center for the Arts Festival has to do that. The triathlon has to do that when they're using any kind of PA system. So again, those are the things, like, do they need to be in the rules and regulations, or because they are part of the bylaws? But then there's the whole enforcement, which is always a challenge, and
Right.
sometimes it's better to spell it all out. So I'm done. Thank you.
Totally valid. Yeah, I actually don't know the answer if certain town laws that currently exist need to be explicitly stated or not. Again, we can ask council that. We're all trying to do this in the right way. So we're trying. All right, Corey, then Jean.
Yeah, just to why off Diane's point a little bit, which is basically that was my question about the Macy's, right? Which is, you know, if we give this lease up, there's still things that, you know, it doesn't, just because we said CYBSA gets this lease doesn't mean they can put up a Macy's, and it doesn't override zoning and bylaws. So just to that's kind of link those two things if that was necessary. But I do want to make a comment. I mean, I sat down and spent a lot of time with a lot of the emails we got, especially from the abutters about their very specific issues. And if you go through the lease kind of line by line, they are addressed. And just Diane, just a point. I mean, section 9 deals with the subleasing thing, and it's pretty explicit. And I think Gene's point earlier is pretty well taken. I mean, this was drafted by our council, so I do expect it to be at the you know the top of best practices when it comes to protecting the town. What I do, the only thing I didn't see was kind of the noise thing. But if we've got other bylaws and stuff, if we think that clarity can go in the rules and regulations, and the board is comfortable doing the lease and then doing the addendum, I mean that kind of makes sense. You know, because again, this came from us, and I think Gene's point earlier was pretty spot on about, you know, we made this, and this should be pretty good. So that's kind of where I am right now.
Thank you, Corey. Gene?
Yeah, I would echo what Jack and Corey are saying in terms of, and I think we should all step back and keep in mind, this is the first lease of many leases that are sitting, waiting out there, whether it's, you know, the Sailing Club, Lightkeepers, potentially Cohasset Drama, Safe Harbor, to the extent that they move into Town Hall. We have a whole bunch of nonprofits that are arguably using, that are in fact using town property. And so I think also too, it behooves us to step back and look across the entire spectrum to make sure the rules and regulations that we're doing are consistent. And I do agree with Corey and Jack that we do already have a lot of existing permit structures, whether it relates to alcohol, music, conservation, and there's nothing in the lease, and the lease is explicit about this, that precludes them from needing to otherwise comply with the law and the permits that they're otherwise required to do. So I would be inclined to move to accept the lease as it currently stands today, but with the acknowledgement that the select board will likely need to do rules and requirements for our leases within the town of Cohasset for all the varieties of properties that we're coming across. There may be some differences we'll need to do across, but I do tend to think that we already have license and permit structures that account for that. Like the Legion, obviously no alcohol is not going to fly there, right? And so we would expect them to have the applicable license requirement, the alcohol requirements, you know, as compared to CYBSA, Sailing Club, and other areas where we would not expect alcohol because they do not have alcohol licenses, right? And so I do think that the rules and requirements can be addressed in a consistent, fair way across all the leases that we're doing that likely trigger a lot of similar issues in terms of, you know, needing to comply with the applicable neighborhood considerations.
Thank you, Jean. That's helpful. All right, I'm going to go to Michelle and then Vince, and then back to the board.
I just wanted to make one comment, which is I've been working with Jim, Vince, and Darren on the terms of the lease, and there were some valid sections that we need to revise, and working with legal, they've agreed that some of the sections are a little stronger in language than they need to be for this piece of land and this organization. So similar to what Jean is saying, that there's going to have to be modifications across each lease based on what we're leasing, who's leasing it, and how it's being handled. And I'm just going to bring it up. One of the concerns is the environmental issues. The lease pretty much states that whoever is leasing this piece of property is responsible for all environmental issues that may take place on the property. And while this is not a gated community and it's not restricted use, there are people that can pull in there and park. It was legal counsel agrees that CYBSA shouldn't be held to that standard of having to police that piece of land and hazard mitigate for things that it's not within their control. So that's one piece that we are going to have to revise. Legal agrees that it's
Okay.
probably best to revise that language, and it was actually brought to us by CYBSA. So I just wanted to make that point.
Okay, that's a very good point. Thank you. Vince?
Yes, thank you again. So a number of the comments about the rules, and I'm fine with creating a separate rule addendum, but the factor of tenants covenants under section 5 does incorporate that the tenant will contact and discuss with the landlord for any such large events requiring police details. So, we will be, and we have done this in the past. We get permits for the opening day parade. We get permits for the All-Star games. And maybe not permits, but we do discuss this with the select board. So again, as tenants of the land for many months or many years, we're aware of a lot of these issues. Michelle brought up that large fact. This is not a gated property. We do not have control 24/7 of this land. I have been up there many times, various times of the day, and seen many, many trucks. Some of the neighbors' landscaping vehicles park in the parking lot for their staging. So, they're pouring gas, who knows the structure of their vehicles. So we can't be beholden to an environmental impact issue that is not caused by us. And I know that the other factor of this lease covers the land and some of the infrastructure. We have a well that's not on the proper baseball field. It's off in the woods behind the swim center, between the baseball fields and the train tracks. That was gifted to CYBSA back in 2006, I believe, when the trains came in. So we have to do some maintenance on that and access that. So I also want to bring those factors up.
Okay, yeah, thank you for clarifying that. I completely agree with you. Those are important issues. And again, this is why we're having this discussion, to make sure we streamline this. Corey, I think you were next.
Yeah, actually Vince's comments are kind of a good lead into my question, which is procedurally, we could approve the lease here, but I guess, I feel like there's still a little bit of a back and forth clarifications now that we've awarded it. It may make sense to have council and CYBSA just kind of go through and tweak things. I think it seems like we're all on the same page that this really has the main things we're looking for. So, if we can just tweak it, maybe then we have a clean version and we can approve that, next time around, because it seems like we're all in the same place, but we want to clarify some language first. Just a thought for procedure.
No, I think that's valid. And I was going to ask Michelle and Vince the same thing, moving forward. I think it's good we're having this discussion, but would it be easier, rather than hashing all of this out right now, to go back and get a new draft version to show us with the CYBSA and council?
I was going to address that.
Okay, go ahead, Jack.
Yeah, I think Corey just nailed it. We do have to, obviously, there's some housekeeping details that need to be straightened out. But I think it is very clear that the sense of this board is that this lease is fundamentally what we want to do, and that some of the other issues arising out of the ball field are best addressed through the rules and regulations, which are specifically referred to in this lease. So we can then get the lease done and approved with the housekeeping, and then we can get into the other things. And there are some very valid points. And I think before we move forward, there are some very valid points that have been raised by youth baseball and also very specifically by the neighbors, that we need to figure out how we're going to deal with that. So I think, we should, but we should also make it clear, like a sense of the board, that we agree with the lease subject to housekeeping details, so we can get this thing moving forward.
Yes, and again, the drafts will be available to the public, or the draft, and posted on our website for everyone to see. We want to be as transparent as possible. Diane.
Yeah, and just, the reason we decided to, the reason we took on this lease in the first place was to protect both of our interests. And
Yep.
This is this is as much about making sure you don't have to worry about environmental spills
Right.
from landscaping trucks as it is about, you know, us trying to make sure that there's a safe traffic flow, for example. But I actually have something completely different. If I didn't bring it up now, I would forget about it. But Jean
All right.
mentioned the sailing club lease, and I was under the impression that was a land use lease for 99 years. Am I incorrect in that that's something coming before us?
I actually have no idea.
Okay, all
I
right,
could be
forget it then.
totally
I just
wrong
wanted to
about
bring
that.
it up
Some-
because,
Said that.
I
in
can
past
check on that
meetings.
specifically. I'm not sure.
okay, thanks.
Well, I have, my comment on that is I have nothing to do between now. I think we should talk about the Sailing Club.
Sorry, if I didn't bring, Jean mentioned it twice, so I was like, are we in the middle is something that I was unaware of, but yes,
Not
to
that I
Jack's
know
point,
of, but
yes.
we'll check.
The sense from my sense is, you know, obviously we want to get this wrapped up as soon as possible. And I think
Yep.
the housekeeping can take place and some of the devil details can there follow. But you know, I want to get this wrapped up as soon as possible too.
Yeah. We're all on the same page about that.
I
I
think
know
so.
there's been a lot happening for the town on this issue and we're anxious to get it wrapped up. Jean and then Jack.
I don't know
No,
if we
I'm all
need-
set.
Okay,
I don't know if we need a
Once.
motion on this, but I'm prepared to make one that
go for it.
the select board move forward with the lease, subject to the tweaks that Michelle is going to work with CYBSA on. It looks like as to section 5B, maybe C, as well as any, you know, sort of lingering back and forth they need to do, with the understanding that the select board will address rules and requirements at a later date.
Yep. Okay, do we have a second?
Second,
Okay.
Any further discussion on that motion? Corey?
I'm just curious as to, not that I'm curious as to why we'd want to do like a pre-motion like this. I mean, would it be just as simple to say, you know, we're going to, you know, move to have a lease ready on the next meeting, and that way we're not approving something pending something else. I mean, I know we all want to get this done here, but I'm not quite sure procedurally if that gets us down the road anymore, if we have to do it later on. So I'm just a little bit uneasy with, you know, making a motion that's pending something else when we could just do it cleanly next time. It's pretty straightforward.
Well, Corey, I think this is obviously is not completely binding. What we're really doing is we're signaling to town council. We're signaling to youth baseball. That we have a meeting of the minds. There's no more. And if the meeting of the minds falls apart when we do it, and you have a good point, it falls apart. But for now, in order to advance this, we do have a meeting of the mind. So we're just signaling that. It's a pretty common way to move a negotiation forward.
I agree with you, Jack. I think it's signaling that we're approving the broad scope of the lease and the majority of the lease, with the assumption that the other issues that we keep talking about and some of those parts of the lease are going to be hammered out. But I do
Okay.
see your point, Corey. I mean,
I would just, if you, Jane, if you wouldn't mind, would you just mind, do you have that written down? Do you remember what you said? Just so we can.
I think, okay, so let me withdraw and restate it. I think we just
All right.
want to move forward with the lease in terms of the substance as drafted,
Hmm.
with the footnote on 5B and C that I understand CYBSA is still finalizing that language with Michelle and town council, for the final draft to be presented to us at the next meeting, February 15th, so we can review the final terms.
that's if it can get done by February 15th. I assume it will either be February 15th or March 1st, based on whether it can get done. All
I
right,
guess my,
Go ahead, Corey.
sorry for being so specific. Where you use the phrase moving forward. what is that? Are we just directing the town to continue negotiations? Is that the actual thing? Just clarify what moving forward means, because I also think people on this meeting are going to have the question, does moving forward mean we signed it? Does that mean that that's, so just.
Yes, we're prepared to sign the lease as drafted, with the exception of provision 5B and maybe C,
Yes.
depending on the edits that are yet to be finalized between CYBSA and the town of Cohasset. And also, we will be drafting rules and regulations at a later date as set forth in the agreement. So there will be no Exhibit C. And so that provision should be omitted from the current lease.
Okay. I feel like I'm trying to watch some nonverbals here. I can't tell if that confused people more or not. I think what we're all doing is we're trying to be on the same page here. I actually don't think we're disagreeing on this.
Yeah,
I think it's just a question of wording for the motion, but I do think we're all trying to get to the same end point. Diane,
I
are you?
mean, so I think the bottom line is that unless we have a substantive disagreement on anything right now, we're really just trying to move forward to finalize the lease for the next meeting.
Yeah.
Understanding that
I
the thing
agree.
that's probably going to change is that paragraph 5B and C, because that's what still has to be changed.
Mhm.
And that there is a provision, I believe it's in paragraph 5, that attaches a current copy of the reasonable rules and regulations of the landlord, i.e. the town of Cohasset. We do not have that right now because we understand that we can implement them from time to time as set forward in the lease. And so we have the prerogative to, do a consistent set of rules and regulations for our lessees throughout Cohasset, or specific to CYBSA if we so want. But for purposes right now,
I think we're just debating.
apart from those
Right.
issues, we're fine on the substance unless someone is not.
No, I think we are fine on the substance, like you said, except for those parts. It's more just, I think, Corey, are you saying Corey would rather not make a motion, it sounds like, and just send people to finish the lease?
I don't see how this goes. I'm not quite sure I'm comfortable with like approving a lease that's not done. I wouldn't do that professionally. I wouldn't sign a house without, having all the documents in order. And I agree. I don't think there's anything substancy that's different, but we talked about the environmental table. We talked about a bunch of stuff. So for me, it doesn't, we can just get this all done cleanly, one time next week and just clean everything up. That way we don't have to have this middle ground. And then what happens if something comes up? Is it done? This takes us down a road that's a little bit messy, I feel. So it'd be cleaner if we just got the thing cleaned up and then just made a clear, hey, we award it, we sign it, we're done. That just makes more sense procedurally to me. But
Jack?
I would just vote.
Yeah, I think this is, a lot of it, this is kind of falls in the realm of an intent type of motion. We're just signaling.
I agree.
We're not obligated to sign this lease in a week or 2 weeks or whenever it is at all. We're just kind of taking the major things and putting them behind us tentatively. So if something comes up, we don't have to do it. We're not signing a binding lease. We're not authorizing to sign a binding lease. What we're saying is what we're looking at now makes sense to our understanding of it. We need to see the final details. And at that time, we will make a binding vote. So
No, I
I
agree.
understand your concern, but we're not at that point, yet.
I hate to keep agreeing with you, Jack, but
It's all right.
I
Most
agree.
people do, Carrie. It's a big hurdle.
It is a
Right.
signal. I believe we're sending a signal, and I don't actually really think this debate / battle we're having right now really matters.
No,
Right, because
really
we're all in agreement here, but I am prepared to still vote in favor of the motion, Gene, that you made, if you're holding that motion and we want to vote on it. Chris, you just came on. Do you have a point?
No, I was just gonna say, an alternative, you could simply just direct the staff and council to make changes in anticipation of the board approving it at the next, as soon as possible, at the next meeting, possible meeting. something.
Okay. I mean,
So
again,
moved.
we're all saying the same thing, regardless of whether we take a vote on this
Second.
motion, we're all saying the same thing.
It's the same.
Yep.
I-
So I think we're good because Jean
Yeah.
what Chris said. I was just about to do that. I think Corey and I both seconded it. So I think we have a
Okay.
motion, a second. There's no other pending motion that was seconded, so
Nope.
we're good to go.
I
Okay,
think we can move forward. I can't, I gotta
right.
find what's going on with Macy Stock. That's what I want to
all
find
right,
out.
yeah, exactly. We all have Olympics to go watch. Okay.
Uh.
All right, so we have a motion and a second, no further discussion, roll call vote, starting with Jack.
Jack Creighton, aye.
Corey Evans, aye.
Jean Haley Dippled, aye.
Diane Kennedy, I.
Harry Thompson, I. Whew. Okay, after all that, we did that. All right. I feel very positive about this progress and getting this box checked tonight. Vince, thank you so much for being on here. The
Thank
next
you.
step is done. Michelle, thank you so much for all your continued work on this. You're the best. All right,
Agreed.
and we will keep everyone informed in the town of when these next discussions will be happening. And once we get the next draft of the lease, that will obviously be posted for people to see and to know about. Jean,
So people can plan, because I know there's just a ton of interest on both sides. I do think it's a fair expectation that the lease is finalized in light of the tweaks we were talking about, which are not significant, by February 15th. Likewise, in terms of the lights, are we going to have that presentation on February 15th as well? Because I've gotten questions about that as well.
that is a possibility. It depends on if that presentation is ready and if the lease is able to be ready by February 15th. I
The
know,
presentation, yes, the presentation for the lights is ready. So we're more than prepared to discuss that.
okay. We're
And I'll be-
reviewing, again, Corey, Chris and I are reviewing the agenda to plan the agenda on Thursday, but we can tentatively plan to have those things both on there as long as, again, we have to have the lease draft done though. I think for the lights conversation to happen. So just making sure in terms of the schedule of our town council and everything, I want to say tentatively, I'm not trying to be cagey here. I think ideally it can be then, but you know, worst long-term scenario, it would be March 1st, depending on if the lease draft is ready. We will know that, I mean, in the next couple days. Okay. All right.
Sounds
any-
good. Thank you.
Thank you, Vince. Any further comments? If not, we can move to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second,
All right, roll call vote.
Jack Creighton, aye.
Corey Evans, aye.
Jean Haley Dippled, aye.
Diane Kennedy, I.
Harry Thompson, aye. All right. Whew, it's nice to have a short meeting.
Thank you.
It is.
Good night, everyone.
Night, everybody.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.